All right, let's get started. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Business Support Series webinar on PMO solutions. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Sandra Thompson, and I'm the event specialist with the Chamber and your host for this morning. Businesses are starting to recover from the pandemic, but we know it won't be a quick, easy fix. Our guest today is talking about PMO solutions, how to identify what you need in your portfolio, and a review of tools on the market that are available to you. Thank you to everyone who submitted your questions for our presenter. When we get to the Q&A, feel free to type any other questions you have into the chat box and we will get to them. It's my pleasure to welcome our host, Cynthia Giles, Senior Project Manager with Capstone Project Solutions. Cynthia has been leading business process improvement and managing projects for over 20 years. Welcome, Cynthia. Thank you for joining us. I will pass it over to you now.
All right, thank you very much. And as we move through, we're going to have a very informal chat today. I'm hoping to hear from you throughout the presentation just to make sure that we answer your questions and follow your threads and train of thought. But let's get started, and I will do a very quick overview of some of the pieces that we'll be talking about. So first of all, I just want to go through some of those categories of project tool solutions that we find on the market. And you can pretty much bucket them all into about 3 different categories. So we'll explore that. And we'll talk about the benefits and the challenges of each because they all are very unique. And understanding the benefits and the challenges will help you to really be able to differentiate which avenue you should be following, but also to be aware of some of those things that might crop up along the way and give you some opportunities to ask really insightful questions with your potential vendors. Tips and best practices for selecting the right tools will certainly be helpful. And then I'm going to give you an example of what you can look for when you go through product demonstrations, some of the tricks that might come up, some of the tips you certainly want to be able to ask about. And at least when you see something in action, there's perspective that comes with that. So we're going to give you a bit of perspective. So just very briefly, I'm Cynthia. I do this for a living across Canada and into the US, and we absolutely love PMO implementations. It gives us an opportunity to do a deep dive into the organization, to understand how you work, how your teams work, and then from there really understand your needs, and then go and find the right tool from one of those categories and work with companies to actually adopt them and sustain them. So we're women-led. We grew up in Atlantic Canada and are now growing outside of those Atlantic Canadian borders, but we love home. So home brand is where it's at, and we continue to look for new team members from Atlantic Canada as we grow out and deliver all of our services. Just very briefly, the PMO selection tool that I'm going to talk to you about today is just one of the things that we do, but we also do training on practices. We rescue projects when they're not going as well as they should or realizing the benefits that are anticipated. We offer a project manager on demand, meaning, you pick up the phone and ask for project manager and we land on your door ready to go to work. There's planning and services delivery. There's all kinds of things. And of course, there's our own project tool called Encore. So let's just get down to why you're here today. Let's talk about the focus. Whenever you go out looking for a tool, obviously you're not looking for any tool just to fill a gap and just to fill an immediate need. You are looking for the right tool that will grow with you and with your business. And we're finding that a lot of times there's so much on the market, though, that companies are very overwhelmed. And so they'll go word of mouth. What do you use? And what do you use? And how do you find it? And then they'll go and look for the tool on the internet, and pretty much the pretty pictures grab them. And then they're off there making some subscription purchase, or they're reaching out to the vendor for a longer contract. But there's a lot more to it. And starts with understanding the kinds of tools that are on the market. So the other thing that we really need to understand, besides what's on the market, is how do you work today? Sometimes you want to be able to continue to use the same tools that you have and augment it. But other times you want to do a complete, overwrite and start fresh. So those are your future state requirements. How do you need to work? What sort of functions do you need this tool to be able to do? Does it need to integrate with anything else, or can it be a standalone? And then, of course, you're thinking about the process. How does your team want to work? Where does decisions get made? Are they automated? Is it manual? And there's a whole list and host of questions that we can ask in order to really and deeply understand the future state requirements. But it is important to understand your current state. What are your pain points? What are you hoping to solve? Where are you hoping to achieve some efficiencies? What are you hoping that you will not have to deal with in the future? All those pain points are things that you address again in your future requirements. And again, some tools and categories of tools will address these better than others. So investigating your options obviously starts with some of those market industry research pieces. And when you reach out to the vendor, understanding their approach to actually implementing. So there are so many out of the box options right now. And this is just a quick snapshot of some of the things that come up when you do a quick internet search. All of these work quite differently from the other. As a user, the fit and finish is very different. The user experience is very different. When I sign on to Rike and go to work as a project team member or as a business owner who's leading a team, it's very different when I go and sign into projectmanager.com. There's a much different level of complexity between the two. Asana, again, has a very different feel. And so sometimes it's just understanding how each of these work that will help us make our decision. But initially, when you actually go and do your search, this is just a quick 5-minute search on the internet, and these are the things that jumped out at me. Now, I can't look at these and say which one of these are easy to implement and which ones are hard, which ones come pretty much ready-made and which ones are hugely investive of time to customize and then to implement and stand up and adopt with a team. Really, as an uninitiate, if I was to do a quick internet search, I would have to do a lot of research to understand what each of these actually are and how they work. So that is part of the value of working with somebody who does this for a living or as their service offering. They've pretty much already done the deep dives on all of these and can give you a summation about what is Clarendon versus Asana, what's Hive versus projectmanager.com. Well, why might I look at PMO and ClickUp and teamwork.com versus monday.com? So all of these things take a lot of time and a lot of research. Okay, so we do have 3 categories of tools, and this is where it starts to get quite interesting. The first one is what we like to call the plug and play. These are the things where you can go on the internet, you can find a product or two, and you can use your visa, and in seconds you're up and in to the actual tool. So we call them off the shelf. They are inexpensive and they're ready to use right away. So what we find though, when we use the plug and play products is that, yes, we can use them right now, but we can't really grow with them. What they are is what they are. And it's cookie cutter regardless of the business that's using them. Somebody down the street will have the same features and functions as I do if I was to sign up with the same product today. And more often than not, they're asking for a minimum number of licenses. So the way these companies make money is by batch licensing and by charging you for extra internet IT support and by charging you for additional features as things roll out and things become more complex. So they hook you with cheap and ready, and then they grab you with all of the other pluses in their toolbox. Now, maybe that's okay. Maybe what you see when you open up a plug and play product is all you need, and maybe you can meet the minimum batch licensing and you're okay, and you're going to be fine with that for a couple of years. By all means, plug and play is not bad. Plug and play can be very good, but it's understanding your where you came from and what you're trying to achieve in the future that will help you determine if plug and play is really the right answer for you. Sandra, I see a couple of questions. Do we want to pause here and answer them?
I think we were just saying in the chat, Daleen commented that you and your team are amazing, and I agreed. So that's what popped up. No questions yet, but I'll keep you posted.
All right, thank you. I'll just leave it then and keep on going.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the next category of tool. And the next category of tool is what we call like the quick start. It's a hybrid between plug and play, I'm all ready to go, and oh no, you've got to do a whole lot of setup and customization before you're ready to go. Quick start is kind of in the middle. And what it means is they have taken a very complex tool, and because there are certain features and functions that are always set up the same way, regardless of the client, they do a pre-configuration. So they will set up about 80% of the functionality, and they will configure about 80% of the features, and then they will just sit it on a shelf and wait for the client to come along and to say, yes, I would like to use your product. And then once they get into your shop or into your business, then they will have some deep dive conversations with you, and then they will configure the rest based on your requirements, based on the processes that you want to follow, based on the approval routings that you think you might want to observe automatically, and they will build it out to be exactly what you need it to be. So these are ready to use. Typically, you can expect anywhere between a 3-week setup period to about a 1.5 month setup period. But as a quick start, it's a very short window. And what you might find with this one is that you get a bit more training, a bit more hand holding than you would have gotten with the plug and play. Plug and play is usually more, on-demand training. You'll go to a folder and you'll download the training you have, or, there might be something on YouTube that they've been pushing out some training videos, but it's really you do it yourself. There's no one holding your hand. But with the quick starts, you'd probably get a trainer, and you absolutely should be getting at least a couple of days of in-depth training, role-based, to be able to use your new tool. And they should be providing you all kinds of reference materials that don't reside in their environment, but reside in yours. You need to be able to get at it when you need to get at it, and you need to be able to adjust it as your processes and the way you use your new tool adjust, so that not only can you grow into your product, but your training can grow with you. So it's very affordable as well. By doing a lot of the configuration up front, they are eating a lot of the setup costs. Now, they may try and transfer some of that cost through to you through their contract pricing, but for the most part, they've already made that investment to build it out to a certain point. And so they don't, it tends to help with the prices. And then of course, the customization from that point to actually getting it up and running in your business will often transfer to you as part of a contract cost. It might be modules. For a cost of one module, it's $25,000. And if you were to get 2 modules, there's a discount, and maybe it's only $45,000. But it's certainly a lot more expensive than your $25 per subscription, and at least not as much expensive as some of the other options that we're going to see. So again, middle of the road, because it's pre-configured to a certain extent. You can get it up and running in next to no time. You do get some customized training, and of course you can grow with it and add extra modules. And that's again what we call a quick start product. All right, then the last one is this is the big daddy of them all. This is the one where you absolutely need to know very specifically, what do you want in your future? How do you want to work? Because once you reach out to these vendors for their products, it is not pre-built. They are customizing every aspect of it from day one to meet exactly how your team will work, and the functions and features and data fields and all of the rest of it that you would like to see. So for example, and I'll just use Microsoft as an example, because I think most people are most familiar with this. When you open up Microsoft, whether it's online or on-prem, it's a blank environment. You might as well be looking at a blank PowerPoint screen. There's nothing there. And what happens is the administrator or the support for Microsoft will then, based on what you say, build out forms with fields so that your projects can come in a consistent way, gather the same information regardless of the project type, or project size, and then feed that on in what they call an automated workflow to the next stage of the process. So for example, they will build out a form to say project name, project budget, project start date, end date, project owner, team members, a little bit of a summary. And that's what somebody might call my intake. And then that moves on over to the approver who says, yes, I agree with all these points, and we're going to assign Rodney, and Rodney's going to be the project manager. And then the information moves on to the next stage. All of that is highly customized, highly feature function specific. And that's where all the money is spent, is building out those very unique aspects of your customized tool. Expensive is the key word, and implementation for a customized piece is into the hundreds of thousands. Typically deep pockets. And so we find that these vendors are really trying to be more of the quick starts. They're starting to invest in a lot of time of having some pre-configured elements just to be more competitive in the marketplace. What they're finding is that vendors or clients, forgive me, they're finding that clients are not ready to spend a year investigating and establishing a customized solution. They are busy people. We need what we need yesterday, not in 3 weeks. And if it's going to take me more than 3 weeks to get something up and running, I'm more likely not going to choose you. I'm going to go after somebody who can meet my needs as soon as possible. And so they're feeling the pressure from a lot of these other faster product setups and stand-ups. But there is a lot of value in them too. So if you can take the time to work with a company like Keaton, and perhaps to work with somebody who knows how to set these up efficiently, you can still maybe bring your pricing down a little bit. Do your homework up front, understand your future state, build out your processes. So by the time you go and give Keaton a call or Primavera, you can say, and this is what we want. Now go build me what we've asked for. And that way you save time on all of those discovery workshops, because that can really burn a lot of dollars too, when you're inviting them in to do workshops with you and discovery sessions. And they're doing all of the stuff that you could have done ahead of time. So that would be a key area to save a couple of bucks. This one, you will find training is a lot longer, a lot more in depth. We're talking about a week of training at a time minimum, also role-based. We're talking about training packages that are really thick and detailed and built to exactly reflect the customized solution that you have now adopted. Now, the other thing that I should mention about all of these, we've talked about how to select it perhaps and what it might cost to implement it, but we haven't talked about sustaining any one of these either. So I'm just going to run back to the top of the list, and we're just going to talk about sustaining and administrating this tool, because there's the users, but then there's the backup team making all of this work. And a lot of times we find businesses forget about the backup team that has to support, the front of the team who's actually using the tool. When it comes to plug and play products, the vendor will provide the administration. This is not you having to have a team on site, IT knowledge worthy and able to adjust and build out new functions and features. That's not ever going to be your role. The vendor will maintain that responsibility. All you have to do is send an email or pick up the phone and say, hey, I need, and through their ticketing process, they will address whatever it is you're trying to figure out. But you only have so much wiggle room. This is about dealing with things that maybe aren't working or that you don't understand with the current configuration of their product. You can make recommendations and ask for new features and functions, but you're not likely going to get it. So there is a trade-off between what you can have when you get the help and what kind of help that really means. And then for the hybrids, again, it's middle of the road. You can have the choice of either building out your IT support team or using their support team. You will have more options about what it is you need, but every time you submit a ticket to build out a new feature, it's going to cost you. If you were to submit a ticket to say, hey, this is broken, it's not going to cost you. If you were to submit a ticket to say, you know what, we forgot how to use this part of our tool, can we get some extra training? It's going to cost you. So this one is a little bit of, you win in some areas and you don't win in other areas, but it's still the best of both worlds in my mind. And then, of course, the last one, this is absolutely, you need an IT team in your shop who is fully trained on how to sustain that product. And that means as your team grows and decides they need a new field in the form, your IT app admin or whoever it is knows exactly how to add a new form and with the new field and to go grab the data that then resides in that field. Because if you don't have that, guess who you're calling to build it? And guess what they're doing? And they're not cheap when they charge you. So, again, your IT shop is probably going to be more than one person at this point, very highly skilled, highly trained, and focused. And we call them app admins for that reason. They get to know that one product or those two products very, very well. And that's where they live and breathe, making sure that it's working properly, that as new members of your team come to work, that they can access the environment, that their user roles and permissions are added, and that the tool itself is fully sustained and supported as time moves on. All right, I think that's it for the 3 categories of tools. And I could spend weeks talking about it, but we only have a few minutes. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about next is our process. And we actually run a class on how to do this. So we, yes, we jump into companies and we deliver the solution, the service that I've just talked about, but we will also train you to go and do it yourself. And then also provide you the support as you implement your own process. So we definitely like to share and grow knowledge as we go. So we call this particular one PMO broker, and it starts with the current state discovery. So this is when you sit down with your teams, your stakeholders, your leaders, the people actually who are going to be using the team or the tool, the people that are actually supporting the tool, and you understand, current state, how are you working today? What's really not working for you? How is your process maybe broken or bottlenecked or just duplicated in areas of inefficiency? And we have a very clear understanding of the lay of the land today. Are approvals just not getting through in a timely manner? Do you find that you're missing key information when you submit a request to start up a new project? Do you find that you are going through a bit of a swirling when you try to prioritize your projects because you don't understand which ones really meet your corporate objectives and will help your company grow versus the ones that are nice to have, but they're shouting the loudest so they get all of the attention. And that does tend to cause a bit of swirling. So how do you prioritize and then rank your projects so that you're addressing them properly? Anyway, we figure out all of that in current state. And then we put down the current state hat and we pick up our future state hat. And this is about what do I need in the future in order to be able to do my job and do my job well? How must I work? How must my teams work? How must my tools work? How must I be able to support it so that I don't break the bank? How must I do any number of things? And so there is a process around future state requirements determination. And then you rank your requirements, which ones are must-haves versus need-haves, which ones I have to address first, 1, 2, 3, which ones could I address later, maybe in a future rollout. There's a huge process around future state requirements. Now, is this always cut and dried like this? You always do current state and then you do future state? No. Often when you're talking about current state with your teams, you will find that you're listening for and picking up on the future state asks. It really is a dual conversation, but you're trying to focus your teams on just talking about, how do we work today? And you're making notes about what they're saying about the future. You come back to your future state requirements and you build in, you deep dive a little bit more, and you continue on with the ranking and the prioritization. Once we know the future state, that's when we go and do our market research. You may already have done some research and you can go back and vet those products against your requirements list. Do they meet them fully, partially, or not at all? Or you reach out to other research companies who can do the market scan for you. You can conduct requests for information, or what we term in the procurement industry, RFIs. And that doesn't commit you to anything. It's just an ask out there. You can give some high level requirements and you can say, who's out there who can do this? If you think it's you, send me some information. And you can do a quick review of all of the market materials that come back. And from there, of course, you can go through to an RFP, which is the actual procurement of it. But there's a couple of steps we want to do before we actually go through for procurement. But once we do the market research and we understand the product and we've gone back to our requirements to say, yes, I think this might be right, you may want to do a couple of vendor demonstrations. Again, no commitment. You don't give your vendors any more information because if you do go to RFP, you don't want to have fed so much information out there that the responses are skewed. So you hold back a little bit, but you ask for a couple of general vendor demonstrations of the product, just to again confirm you're still heading in the right direction. Are we looking for the quick start? Are we looking for a hybrid? Are we looking for a complex custom build? And then you can, when you start to write your request for proposal or your RFP, the language might be a bit more specific to help guide the right vendor back to you with responses. Finally, you get through the RFP process and you're able to recommend the right solution and the right implementation approach. So all of this is what we call the PMO broker solution process. And it's very structured to make sure that we're consistent in the way things are understood, planned for, and implemented. And that would be the process that I would recommend for anybody following, trying to get a new tool into their business. We always say it's three things: it's product, it's people, and it's process. So I think we talked about this already, but this last one about the implementation approach planning is a really important question. It's not just about getting the tool and being able to play with your new toy. It's about, well, how do I actually get it into the business in a way that the business can actually adjust, absorb, sustain, and grow. And that implementation can be a phased approach because maybe it's really, really big and you want to bite it down into chunk-sized pieces and roll it out over a few years so your business isn't shocked into the adoption of something new. Or is this a Band-Aid and we absolutely just need to get in and get going? Those are very different approaches, very different change management practices, very different timelines, and all kinds of things that need to be considered, governance and team structures and all the rest of it. So your implementation approach and planning can be suggested by your vendor. You can ask them, what is your typical approach to implementing your product? And if we need to be done in a certain time frame to meet certain deadlines, how might you adjust your implementation approach? What might you do differently? So you can actually use them and their experience as your starting point, then bring that implementation plan in-house and say with your team, okay, this is what they've suggested, but they don't know us. We do. So how might we ask them to shift and adjust? And you can always negotiate that as part of your contract and as part of your statement of work. Just keeping an eye on the time, because like I said, I could talk about this forever. All right, so once you've got your statement of work and you've signed a contract and you know what you're getting, you build out your full project management plan. If you don't have a project manager in-house, I highly recommend you go find one. There's any number of ways to do it. You can go find a consulting agency. There's some very expensive ones, granted, but there's also some very reasonable ones out there. But you're really looking for somebody who's got experience doing this sort of thing. And it doesn't mean they have to come in full time and own the entire implementation with you, because your team is probably pretty darn good. But they can be there just to backfill on some timing and just to help you make sure that you understand the scope of the activities. But again, if you do need the full-on work from your project manager, go get that. Your intent throughout the implementation is to continue to run your business, to continue to move for your clients. And if you're finding that your tool implementation is pulling away from your business focus, I think that's a warning that you're doing too much. Get a team who can focus on this, and that's their world, and they'll do it right. And you keep focusing on your business and making sure that you're addressing your customer needs. Through your implementation of your tool, I know you're going to have this list next to you to say, we know we're successful when. And we call that our benefits measurement and tracking realization. I know we're successful when all of our teams are using the tool. All of our members have been trained, and we have got 0 help desk tickets. I don't know if that's never going to happen. That's like pie in the sky dream world, but that's what we all aspire to. But at some point you've sat down to say, you know what, maybe you don't have any procurement problems anymore. Maybe procurement is part of your workflow. And so that's one of your benefit realizations. No downtime waiting for procurement processes or documentation to be completed. Or maybe one of your benefit measurements is, you know, you've got a smoother intake for projects that are being proposed and a clear alignment to your business and corporate objectives. If your project tool and processes support that, you know, you get to tick that box to say you're realizing that benefit measurement. So it's one thing to build out what you want your benefits to be. And then the other part is, and how am I going to measure that I'm either making progress towards those targets or not? And so that's the tracking part of it. And there's all kinds of ways to do that as well. The change management, it goes without saying these days. And it's really funny how that's changed over time. Way back when I didn't have the gray in my hair, change management was unheard of. It was just something everybody did because that was the natural course and order. But we found over time that change management can be incredibly complex, but it can also really help with your team feeling less afraid of what's coming at them, less anxious about new changes in their job or in their learning, and will help them sustain and grow. So we find change management to be a vital part of any kind of implementation. Again, it doesn't have to be 100%, but it is a person who does this for, you know, this is their job. They understand how to work with various kinds of stakeholder groups. They've done it across industries, and they come in and they live and breathe with your team, and they coach and love them through the change, through this new world, so that by the time they're making their journey, they feel supported the entire way and come out the other side with as few scratches, bumps, and bruises as possible. And of course, you're going to be looking for recommendations for continuous improvement. Whatever we implement today is based on what we know today. But as we work with it, we realize some things we didn't know yesterday. Those are our opportunities for improvement. Or as our business grows and we move into new marketplaces, or we take on new divisions and departments, there are other reasons why we may need to improve and enhance what we actually put into practice, you know, a year ago or 6 months ago or 5 years ago. And so those opportunities for continuous improvement are part of the journey. We have a standard in the industry that says when you have a brand new tool that's implemented, you should be doing a review of that tool and how it's working with your team and opportunities for improvement at least the 6-month mark. Before the 6-month mark, it's too soon. Everybody's still getting used to it. They're all making lists about what needs to change, but some of them are because they don't understand how to use the tool yet. And as they do, as they grow into it, you'll find some of those list items getting crossed off. But by the 6-month mark, we start to find that we're actually feeling a bit more in tune with how we're supposed to be working and how this thing actually works. And so we can make really educated and informed decisions about, well, I really need it to shift here and I need you to fix that. And yes, we're rolling in a new division. Their focus is, I need a new project type. And so you can be very specific and concrete about your asks for continuous improvement. After the 6-month mark, and up to the 1st year mark, you'll do it again. So you get one at 6 months and one at 1 year. After the 1 year mark, you might be able to go annually, but absolutely every year you should at least be sitting down to say, what do we know? What do we know now? And what do we need tomorrow? Make sure you keep up with your continuous improvement. I could tell you some horror stories about companies that didn't. And what it all ended up with is the tool became unused. The team went back to what they were using before, and the pain points that they had addressed and that were removed came back, and the company spent all this money and got nowhere. in the course of about 2.5 years, they were back to zero. That was one company's example, and I could tell you more, but if there were some things that I would absolutely please make sure that you do as part of your tool selection is each one of these. Have a plan, know your targets and track to your targets, understand change and have somebody love your team through it, and keep up with your continuous improvement. All right, so this is when I want to get into showing you one kind of, and I'm going to call this a hybrid. This is like the middle of the road guy. This particular tool came about because of all of the things that we were doing with our clients, helping them find their one true tool that they could use and how their processes would build out to support them. And in the course of that journey, we realized that there was still a gap. Yes, you've got these quick starts. Yes, they're 80% pre-configured, but they still take too long to stand up. They're still uber expensive in some regards, and their licensing is just a little bit out to lunch still. And so we had a lot of clients coming back to us saying, well, don't you have anything we could use? And I got to tell you, as a project delivery company, not having your own project tool, it became harder and harder to actually say no and not blush. So we thought, okay, it's about time. We're going to go get our own tool and figure it out. So what I'm going to show you are some of the things that we learned through our own journey. These will be your tips to look for as you go on your journey. And hopefully, I'm really hoping that this will help you. So bear with me. I have a new tool, my own computer. I've shifted from, regular to an Apple, and I'm going to see if I can figure out how to do this again. So let me go over here. And all right, can everybody see this okay?
Yep, we can see it.
Still good?
Yep.
All right. So what we've done for Encore is we've broken things into two segments. We've got where the business works, where you manage documents and you manage permissions so people only get to see what they're supposed to see. We put the right information in front of the entire team, not just the project team. And I'll explain that a bit more in a bit. And then the project center, where the actual projects live and where activities get done and you get your dashboards. What happens in the world now when you go to a project tool is they try and smush all of that together. And they expect the business to come live in these project tools as well in their roles, either as a business leader or as a team member. And they think, okay, yeah, that's well and good. But what we found is the project managers love smush because everything's in one space. But the business says, but I'm not a project manager and I don't want to live in your world. And so they stop using the tool and they still phone home to the project manager all the time to say, and how's that going? And are we on track? And did we overspend on our money? And the project manager's going, but I have a tool. Why aren't you using it? And then they do status reports. And so there was still a little bit of a disconnect. What we found is that when we built it as two modules and then connected them through quick links down your left, the business loves this. They can come in, all the documents are set up in folders that they're pretty much already used to using through their own internal services and systems. But now there's a bunch of other information and I don't need to go phone my project managers anymore because it's at my fingertips. So the first thing that jumps out at them is, oh, look at the recent document activity. Look at what that project's been doing. Okay, I don't need to go and talk to somebody. I have a coffee break. I'm going to dive and I'm going to go take a look at what that presentation was all about. And so now they're informing themselves. They're actually being a bit proactive. So my recommendation to you is to look for a tool that will allow your business to work the way they naturally do. Try not to force them to adopt a tool that's really for project managers and for team members. It's a forced adoption. It's like pushing a rock uphill. So meet them the way they work. This is not going to take away from your projects. If anything, it's going to add to it. We find that there's less phone traffic, less emails, less how did you do's, because now they can go and they can just feed themselves. The other thing that jumps out at them are these lovely little registers. So as a project manager, and for any of you on the call, you probably go through your status reports every week where you cut and paste from your documentation and you inform a status report that says, these are the issues that we're dealing with. These are the risks that I see coming. This is my money this week. By the way, we had this change, and it's a lot of cut and paste, cut and paste, cut and paste to build out a status report that you then send out weekly or bi-weekly. What happens when you actually have this in the business center is, again, your team and your business leaders can feed themselves. We're not saying take away your status report, but maybe help make things a bit more self-sufficient. So I'm just going to jump into a change register. I don't think there's anything in here. And this is our test environment. Okay, so here we go. We don't have a change register started, but what we find with this particular tool and things to look out for are the opportunity that anybody on your project can come in and add a change or an issue, a decision. You don't want to lock it down to just your project manager. Make your teams independent, allow them to work to their fullest. So you're being able to start a new register item should be open to your entire team. And you're looking for key value items. You're looking for a pre-form that's already built. You want something that you might have to say to your vendor, okay, I just need a field or two, but honestly, like, let's go with out of the box, which means, configure as much as possible. So you're going to want the name of whatever it is. You're going to want to have a field area where you can add a bit of content, a bit of verbiage. You want to know the date any item was submitted. And the reason for that is if something is going long, as in 3 days, 5 days, 10 days, and it hasn't been addressed, you can actually add triggers to send you a notification to say, hey, Cynthia, ping, bing, you haven't done this yet, but this was a high issue item on your list of things to do. Go pay attention to it. And then you should be able to forward it on. So helping you not keep all the stuff in your mind and helping you not to write it down in a notebook, but automate some of those reminders so that these things happen in the background and ping you when it's important, and you can still go and concentrate on work or getting your project done. You want to be able to assign it to one or maybe two people. Sometimes it's not just one person owning an issue resolution or a change adoption or change approval. Maybe it's two. So I always say, it's really nice if you can have the option to put more than one name in here. And of course, you want to be able to track status on these things. Is it in progress? Is it at risk? It hasn't started and it's burning. Has it been completed? Is it approved with comments? What are those status symbols and labels that you want to be able to use? And then, of course, the ability to add attachments. So here's where we get to be a little bit careful. You only want to do this kind of stuff in one space. If you're going to adopt a tool that does all of these registers and tracking of issues, risks, and changes in your tool, then do that there. If you're going to have it in something like this, where it's a business center, then do that there. But whatever you do, don't do it in two places, because at some point, they're going to be very, very off kilter. They won't be following, the information will be different, and then nobody will know where their true source of information is. So it's in one place or it's in the other place. My recommendation is put it in a business space, because then they can make themselves self-aware of what's happening, and you can set notifications at any time somebody adds a new risk or makes a new decision. You get a ping to say, hey, by the way, so-and-so just loaded this document. I think you might want to know about that, or an issue has just been raised on project ABC. It's a high issue, like high priority, high attention, go pay attention. Then I will immediately go, as a project owner, go take a look and make sure that I'm informed and can add my voice to help direct the resolution of that item. I'm just going to cancel that. All right, let me go back to the home. The other things to look for: easy navigation. The easy navigation should be somewhere that, again, everybody can see, but not necessarily everybody can access. You want to be able to have permission differences for your team members. So action items for my team, I use this for any of the action items coming out of team meetings, and everybody has access to that one. However, not everybody has access to my notebook. My notebook is very specific to me and some of those detailed, confidential notes I take on my projects. These are my minutes. Some of them just don't need to be out there in the world, and I can lock it out. So you want to be able to look for a tool that gives you flexibility on permissions. What are some of the other things we've got in here? Oh yes, the news. I can post things to my team and they love getting the sound bites. Oh, you know what? We did XYZ. Again, they're not digging for it. They're not, getting overloaded in emails. When they come to their business center, they can go look at the news and find out what's happening. So you're looking for something that works the way you want it to, that gives the information as you need it in real time, and allows you to actually be efficient in how you want to roll out your business's activities and your projects. So that's the business center. But now let's go look at specifically a project manager's tool. So what you're looking for in a project manager type tool is that dashboard that gives you a complete overview of how all of the projects are going in all of your areas. And as you can see in our lovely test environment here, everything's burning down. But isn't that a good visual? So we're looking for things like, how is the health on my time? How is the health on my costs across my projects? What about my team workload? Are they overworked or underworked? Some tools represent this really, really well. Some tools don't do a very good job of this at all. But this is your snapshot of all the projects my business is undertaking. How am I making out? How are things moving along? Here's all my costs, right? So this one is another interesting one too. I'd recommend a tool that allows you to track 3 categories of costs. One, the budget. This is the whole high level aspiration where leadership says, when they're doing their annual planning for how much money to spend on things, they might say, I think that's around a $250,000 project. We're going to earmark $250,000 of our corporate budget over here. That's your plan cost. Then the other one that you want to track is that's your budget cost. The other one you want to track is something called your planned cost. As you actually plan out your project and begin to really understand how much that thing's going to cost to build or to promote or to grow into a new market space, you put a real figure. And it might be, oh, you know what? They gave us 250,000, but I really only need 150. So that goes in another area. And finally, the third that you're tracking are your actual costs. As you roll out your project and you incur invoices for services or invoices for product or invoices for material or travel or you name it, track the actual cost. And then all 3 of these columns will work together. At any point, if your plan is over what your company budgeted, you got to do something. You got to go have some serious conversations, and preferably before you go over. And again, if your costs are coming up to what you planned, then hopefully you're done your project, or you're starting to think about how else am I going to go get some more money because maybe things have changed and we've taken on some additional scope. There's any number of conversations, but those 3 buckets and categories are the types of costs, budgets that you want to be able to track in one place, in one view. So I can see this, for example, this particular project, Evenflow, has a very healthy budget. We haven't planned anything. The planned column is still low, and we haven't really incurred anything. But this project, this one's really interesting. So not only has there been no budget, but we have planned for some costs and we're incurring some costs. But I haven't, the company hasn't given that team any money to go work with. So I don't know how they're paying their bills. All right, this one is also very important too. Workload. Understanding how your team is allocated across the project is super, super important. And I'm actually going to dig into a specific project example for this one. Apparently not that one. And not that one. We'll start here. In this particular project, we can see that Katie is overworked. Whatever it was we had planned her to pay attention to, she must be overworked because there's a lot starting to fall off her plate. And this little red thing is my indicator. Now, in this particular case, of course, and in this test environment, it's one task. But imagine a project where there's 5 people and you can see at a glance, who's green. Yep, they're managing the workload perfectly. Who's red? Oh my goodness, maybe we need to give them some help or assign them some resource assistance, or maybe just find out if they're just struggling because the task itself is not clear. There's all kinds of conversations that can be generated from this. And of course, what's been completed. Is it time to reassign Giles because he's all done? And now he's just sitting there going, I need some more work to do on this project. Well, let's take Giles off and let's go put him on another project and make sure that we're using that resource efficiently and effectively. So your dashboards are great. You also want a tool that's going to give you flexibility to work again the way you and your project teams need to work. So I'm going to give you another example here. I want somebody who's actually got some stuff in there. Right. This is a project manager's dream. I love this. I could sit in this view all day long and enjoy it with a cup of tea. This is not where a lot of people like to work, and certainly not my teams. The other way people like to work are boards, and we see this more and more with Agile. But boards give you the flexibility again to work the way you need to work. Sandra, how are we doing for time? Because again, I could keep going.
Yeah, we've got about 8 minutes left. So I have a couple questions here, but anybody who's watching, if you want to put some questions in the chat box, and we can get to them after you wrap up here.
Yeah, just give me 3 more minutes and I'll hurry up and get through, because there's
Perfect.
some stuff. Yeah. Okay. So you want a tool that's going to give you a chance to work with boards as well. This could be months, April, May, June. This could be people, Sally, Kathy, Rodney. This could be to do, doing, done. You can set this up any way you want. And again, you're looking for something to give you that flexibility. And as your cards are done, you might move them across. Super easy. The trick here is not every tool has a connection between the cards and what the project manager calls their Gantt. You want a tool that as your project manager builds out the schedule, the board has the same information, that you're not having to duplicate your efforts to keep things up to date, that if I update in the sheet, that my teams see the update in the board, that as I add information in my, my notes about what's happened, and I send that out, that it shows up in the board for that note. It's all got to be connected. And some companies are not there yet, so be careful for that one. Other team members just like to look at a calendar. What the heck's coming up? Okay, it's the 10th and I've got such and such to do. Oh, you know what? I know I didn't finish the work that I did last night or last week. I'm going to reassign it today and I'm going to put it in there. And so it should show up, right? And then you can also track to your progress. How are we doing? What priority is it? Am I adding a comment? Look for a tool that gives you that engagement, that allows your team to get all their information in one space. And by all means, please look for a tool that is going to allow you to look across your team, look at their assignments, maybe plug in and say, what is wrong? What is not happening that should have happened? And again, start to give some direction and send those notes across. So you're looking for something quite flexible. Look for your typical your typical spreadsheet, because that's what your PM needs. Look for a board or a calendar, because that's probably what your team needs. Look for a collaboration space that gives you and your teams a view across your project, so you can all be aligned and understand, who's struggling, who needs help. They finished their task. I knew I was dependent on that. Now we can stay together and move together. And I'm going to have to stop there, but yeah, there's more. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you so much, Cynthia.
You're welcome.
As an event planner here at the chamber, I've been writing lots of notes down about what you're talking about. Yeah, so we have a few minutes left to answer any questions. I have a few here that have come in, but a lot of them you did address in your presentation, so that is great. My first question is a bit of a selfish one. For event planning in particular, is there a specific tool that you would recommend for that industry?
So I would love to tell you that there is specific tools for event planning, but there isn't. There's specific tools for construction and engineering, because they just think very differently. But in your case, I think it just depends on how complex your event planning is. You could very well go with a quick start. If all you need to do is to track a couple of objectives and a couple of activities, and it's really just you and maybe one or two other people, a quick start would be fine. But if you're looking to maybe grow and manage some more complex things, you're probably looking at something like Encore, and you do not need the customized.
Right. Yeah. That's cool. And am I seeing, is that Encore, was that connected through with SharePoint?
It is. So what we did was we took those products that are proven in the industry, and we said, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just going to find a way to make them work together and to build those connections and those permissions. So it's already proven, people use them, they trust them. Now we've bolted them together. And yes, this is Encore. It's SharePoint plus a project tool bolted in a specific way. This one you can have for a single, you can one license if you want it. But if you were to go out and try to do this on your own, you'd be hit with batch licensing and a couple of other things. So we've been able to get rid of some of those pains.
That's great. No, yeah, exactly what you're saying. It's really nice when people are already used to using something, and I know SharePoint is often used in the office space, then it's easier to implement on a new tool.
Exactly.
That was another question that we had that was submitted, and I know you talked a bit about this, but we're asking about advice when you have staff who are resistant to change or resistant to new tools, and how you can kind of help them out.
So if they're resisting the change or the new tool, they're afraid primarily. I would say that's a big one. How is my job changing? What new duties are you going to give me that I'm already busy? Like, oh my God, what else are you going to ask me to do is the biggest one. So showing them how it makes things easier, that it saves them time, that now they're not working in 5 different environments, they're in one, will win them over. Asking them to join the team as a member through the implementation in this journey. Sometimes your loudest naysayers become your biggest champions, and all they need to do is understand it more. So invite them in.
Right.
Yeah. And then make them part of that adoption journey. When we talk about benefits realization, they sometimes the naysayers are more about, what, I just can't wait to prove that that's going to fail. And I'm going to point out every time it's not doing what it's supposed to do. Well, guess what that is? That is an amazing tester. Like, invite them in to go test and break it or try to break it. And by the time they're done, they're loving it, and then they're promoting it. So there's a way to bring them along with you for sure.
Right. Great advice. Thank you. Okay, well, it's 10:58, so we will wrap it up here. Thank you so much for sharing all of this knowledge with us. This has been very helpful, I know, for me, at least. So this will be recorded. It will be available on our YouTube channel afterwards, and I'll send out the link to everybody who's registered. So thank you all for attending. We are also excited to announce that tickets for our 2022 Halifax Business Awards are now on sale. It's back in person, live in person, and we're very excited about it. So you can head to our website to register at halifaxchamber.com/events. And yeah, thank you all for attending this morning. We hope you have a great day. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thanks, everyone.